And I want to welcome you all today, and I'd ask you to stand for the singing of the National Anthem, which will be led by Master Sergeant John Deutsch of the U.S. Army Military District of Washington.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, and I see you're all being seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Camille, and members of Congress, distinguished guests, good afternoon. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the United States Institute of Peace, Vice Chair George Moose, it is our pleasure to welcome you to this beautiful place, to the George Shultz Great Hall under the Ansari Dove. It is a statement that peace is the soaring hope of humanity, and that's why we are here today. It is our distinct honor to host you for the swearing in of former Congressman Jim Marshall as the 4th President of the United States Institute of Peace. This is a momentous occasion. For only the 4th time since its founding by Congress in 1984, we'll have a new president to lead the Institute into its next stage. 28 years ago, Congress had the temerity, the audacity, really, to do for this country what George Washington had wanted to do at the dawn of our founding: establish the U.S. in the business of peace. This institution has grown tremendously over the years, from humble beginnings with a handful of staff, through the leadership of Bob Turner and Sam Lewis, to the 19 years of leadership by Ambassador Dick Solomon, to the space we sit in today. One thing has remained constant. The United States Institute of Peace represents an idea of profound importance, that this country must, and that its leaders recognize that it must, seek nonviolent ways to prevent and manage international conflict and develop the capabilities to stabilize and reconstruct nations after war. Our job is to find practical and sustainable solutions for a dangerous and increasingly complex world. This is what we are doing with our partners in the military and diplomatic communities, as well as with non-government organizations, so many of whom are here today. Ronald Reagan said that peace is not the absence of conflict, but rather the ability to manage conflict through peaceful means. Our job is to understand those means. USIP strives to provide sound, nonpartisan analysis, critical thinking, education, and training based on best practices learned over a decade in conflict, on the ground, in critical and sustainable work in challenging places such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Libya, Sudan, South Sudan, and Syria. In an era of fiscal austerity, we're meeting our mission while protecting American values and interests, saving money, and ultimately, through sound planning of our programs and initiatives, informed by strategy, vision, and capability, in the end, saving American lives. I'd like to take a moment to say that we're reminded by the appalling events this week of the seriousness of the charge, of the mandate that USIP has, and the courage, commitment, and sacrifice of those who carry it out. All those countries I mentioned earlier, USIP has been on the ground in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. USIP is one of the few government agencies U.S. government agencies that has stayed on the ground throughout the entire U.S. involvement. And these have been dangerous places, and the USIP people have shown tremendous courage and commitment. We were really shocked and saddened to hear about the tragic loss of the U.S. Ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens, and 3 consulate staff members. Chris was a friend of the Institute. USIP has been actively and intimately involved working with Chris in Libya. And frankly, we think he was making a difference, an important difference, and we've been trying very hard to make a difference as well. We were honored to work with him in the weeks and months surrounding the uprising in Libya when we were on the ground, while he served as U.S. representative to the Transitional National Council. We mourn this loss and offer our sincere condolences to the families, friends, and colleagues at the Department of State. This is the environment in which we have been steadfastly and ably led for the last quarter century. This is the environment in which we are confident that Jim Marshall will lead the United States Institute of Peace as it seeks to lay the groundwork for a safer, more peaceful world. Now I'm pleased to welcome Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who represents Missouri's 5th District in Kansas City and Independence, to give the invocation. Congressman Cleaver is serving his 4th term in the House of Representatives, where he's a member of the House Financial Services Committee, and he also chairs the Congressional Black Caucus. Congressman Cleaver is a pastor of the United Methodist Church. Mr. Congressman, it's an honor to have you as part of this ceremony today, and I invite you to the stage to give the invocation.
Thank you. Let us engage God and bow our heads as we seek to reach his throne of grace. Almighty and loving God, our Father, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks that there are those who remember that your Son was called the Prince of Peace. We thank you for this day. We thank you for our ability to gather in a peace institution. We also, O God, pray and thank you for its existence and for its commitment to peace. Trusting in your great goodness and mercy, we humbly ask your blessings on Jim Marshall. We ask also that you bless the tremendous job that he must perform at a most difficult time. Grant Jim Marshall an extra ounce of your grace and mercy. He will need your divine guidance as he seeks to become an instrument of your peace. And with your help, where there is hostility, may he work to replace it with harmony. Where there is hate, may your power help him to replace it with hope. And where there are war clouds, with your power, may he work to replace it with radiant rainbows. Lord, bless Jim Marshall as he assumes this new role. And at a time like this, neither he nor we can turn to any better place. And so we thank you in the name of those who came before us, and we thank you for the support and blessings you will place on him, not just today, but throughout this great work. Amen.
George? I think on the script. You're on the script, and Dick's on the script. Come on up. We are welcoming Jim Marshall to the Institute, but we're also saying farewell and thank you to Dick Solomon for his dedication and service, his commitment to the work of USIP and to this country, and for his mentorship and leadership over the last 19 years. I'd also add for his friendship to me personally while I've been chairman. He's been terrific. He has heard me say many times, we are literally and figuratively in the house that Solomon built, as was said of Babe Ruth in Yankee Stadium. This is the house that Solomon built. Not only the building itself, but the institution as well. As a token of gratitude, the Board of Directors would like to present you with a special gift. We've decided to present you with an artwork of a print by Pablo Picasso titled Blue Dove. Picasso originally did a lithograph of a realistic dove that became famous during the International Peace Conference in Paris in 1949. That original dove was an emblem of hope during the Cold War. Picasso even stated at the first Peace Congress, "I stand for life against death. I stand for peace against war." The depiction of the dove is not new to the Washington landscape. It should be noted that the dove on the USIP flagpole, which is over there outside, was an emblem of, on the USIP flagpole, matches the dove on the roof of Mount Vernon that belonged to George Washington. And it also bears a resemblance to Picasso's Blue Dove, and also this is the Answery Peace Dove. The building is a symbol. You might also notice that this piece looks especially familiar, and it's the very same piece that you used to hang in the main conference room of the Institute's 17th Street location. It's been with the Institute since 1998, and we want it to remain in good hands. So, we are. Say a few words?
Well, I think I have a second.
Oh, George. Sorry, George.
You go first. Yes. You have the last one.
I'd be remiss if I didn't add a word or two of thanks and praise. This is a day marked by many emotions, certainly a day of celebration, but also a day for remembrance and thanksgiving. And as someone who spent more than 35 years working in the State Department, you will forgive me if my thoughts go first, especially at this hour where friends and colleagues are gathering at Andrews Air Force Base. To Chris Stevens and his colleagues, Glenn Doherty, Sean Smith, and Tyrone Woods, who were just the latest in a long line, unfortunately, of peacemakers and peace builders to give their lives in the service of our country. The fact that Ambassador Stevens had many friends in this House makes the sense of loss all the more profound. So it's fitting on this day and in this place that we remember them and give thanks for their courageous service. But there are many others to whom we owe a debt of gratitude on this day. And it begins with those who more than 30 years ago had the wisdom and the vision, and as the chairman said, the audacity to embrace the idea of a United States Institute of Peace and to create a place uniquely dedicated to the mission of peacemaking and peace building, an institution that would embody the aspiration of the American people to be peacemakers in this world. And that debt of gratitude extends as well to our outgoing president, Dick Solomon, who seized that vision, invested it with substance, imbued it with practical effect. Moreover, he, and I dare say, add his wife Anne, also deserve thanks and lasting praise for having had the vision and indeed the audacity to imagine that the Institute could one day be housed in a building such as this one. A building that is both the embodiment of its mission and the practical platform for its work. So Dick, one thing I've learned from my many years in Washington is how rare it is for a vision to be transformed into a reality. And even rarer when the vision is one that is motivated not by ego or hubris, but by a genuine concern to serve and advance a greater purpose. The Institute's shining new edifice is one of those rare examples. And we thank you for your inspired vision, as well as for its concrete realization. And we will remember you with gratitude for your equally inspiring leadership of the Institute and its work over the last 19 years.
Thank you, Robin, George. Let me say a few things, but this is an opportunity to hear from our new maximum leader. But you both have given me a few ideas and comments to work off of. First, I've had the privilege and the honor of a number of opportunities to serve in public offices. And it's very rare, as George just indicated, to have the time and the opportunity to complete a project that you might get started. And so I'm personally very indebted to the board of directors over its various incarnations to have had the 19 years to in fact accomplish a very worthy project. And again, that is something that one doesn't often have the opportunity to do, but I am deeply indebted to the board for that kind of support. And we all noticed as we came into the building today that our flags are at half-mast. They're at half-mast next door at the State Department and in government buildings. And as Robin indicated, Ambassador Chris Stevens was a colleague and a good friend of the Institute. What is not so well known is that the Institute itself has lost people, particularly individuals in Iraq who were working with our staff. We nearly lost our chief of party when a rocket-propelled grenade rammed through his office in Baghdad, which makes it all the more evident that peace building, managing conflict in these areas of the world that are so riven with conflict is a very dangerous and a very challenging bit of work. What is not so well known is that more ambassadors have died in service to their country than general officers, which is not to put down our wonderful military, but to only say that our civilian officials are out there without the surrounding security support that our ambassadors in many ways should have. And so it just gives weight to that view that was the title of a recent book that called our Foreign Service our first line of defense. And we, the Institute of Peace, in our work have become active participants in that first line work. Yesterday, I received a wonderful telephone call from Father Ted Hesburgh. Father Hesburgh, as I think many of you know, he's a national icon, a supporter of human rights, longtime president of Notre Dame, but he was also, as you may not know, a long-serving member of the Institute of Peace and a very active encourager of this building project. Frankly, when I went to the board the summer of 1994 and said, we have three options. We can continue to rent space. We might buy a building up there on Think Tank Row. Horrible to use that phrase, I know. Or we could build a facility of our own. And I said, my wife Ann has pointed us to a location which would be perfect for our work, right across from all the war memorials. It was then a Navy parking lot. And thanks to Senator Sam Nunn and Richard Danzig, the Undersecretary of the Navy, they said, as long as you give the Navy the most valuable resource that one can have in this city, parking, you can build on our site. And so to the shock and amazement, the shock and awe of the board, we had a piece of land that sort of called for the construction of a building. And as Senator Nancy Kassebaum said, it just seemed right that the Institute of Peace should have this facility across from all the war memorials. Father Hesburgh is 95 years old. He's very frail. He wanted to be here today. We've named one of the halls in his honor, given the role that he, along with former Secretary of State George Shultz, played in supporting this project. But he said that, again, in the autumn of his life, he can look with great satisfaction that the vision of an Institute of Peace has come as far as it has. But I'm also reminded of a little anecdote. In 1997, we had the piece of land, but we needed a lot of money to build this building. And Father Hesburgh had Ann and me out to Notre Dame for a little tutorial on fundraising. And we had a very nice lunch. And then he took me to his donor wall. And on this wall were 100 headshots of his 100 most successful graduates. And in a 2-year period, Father Hesburgh raised over $1 billion for the Fighting Irish, for Notre Dame. Now, we don't have an alumni association, and frankly, my background did not include experience in fundraising. But we did acquire, I think your term began in '94, we did acquire a leadership in Chairman West that turned out to be brilliant at the effort that we succeeded at in raising the resources to build this building. So really, this was a collective enterprise, and we're all indebted without question to Chairman West for having done an awful lot to make this building happen. And as a Chinese visitor said to me a couple months ago, came in after a big conference that we had on the 40th anniversary of the opening to China, he said, among other things, he said, gee, with this building, you must be an important institution. And of course, when we were working out of the American Chemical Society building or the American Restaurant Association building, we didn't convey the seriousness of purpose and the impact that clearly this building, which gives us permanence, which gives us visibility, and which gives us the meaning of being here at the War and Peace corner of the mall, all adds up to. Now, why are we in this building? It's because the charter that we have for our work from Congress is so meaningful, but it also is a fact that many of you, not all of our staff are in this audience today, but they and their predecessors have done the hard work, done the innovative thinking about techniques of conflict management, and done the work in various and very difficult and challenging places around the world to justify the support that we've had from what is still, upon occasion, a skeptical Congress that we're really making a difference. But thanks to the work of the staff, particularly the kind of leadership we've had by people like Mike Graham, our Chief Financial Officer, but my counselor and strategist in dealing with the many challenges of running this organization, we have become a true asset to the foreign policy and national security purposes of our country. So it's been a privilege for me to have had this opportunity to not only lead the organization, but be in this remarkable facility. The Institute of Peace, without question, has a bright future in what is still so tragically a violent, conflicted world. That world has changed. I was, as many of you were, a child of the Cold War, the great power, superpower confrontations. That world is gone. And our institutions of governance are struggling to adapt to this new world because it requires very different approaches to diplomacy, to dealing with mass publics that have been mobilized by one of the most revolutionary devices in history. Cell phones have given a voice and information to all those people who are out in Tahrir Square, who even today are pressing the Chinese government to deal with corruption. And so we're dealing with a political environment that has changed dramatically, and the innovative work of the Institute is all the more important. So in conclusion, just let me say I'm very pleased that the board has managed this transition in a way that is bringing on board a very distinguished public servant. Jim Marshall, I have no doubt, will add a distinguished new layer of activity and accomplishment to the work of the Institute of Peace. And unfortunately, the world will be a great challenge, but I think he will lead us on to further accomplishment. So, Jim, I welcome you and wish you all the best. And again, appreciation to all of you who have come here today for supporting our work. Jim.
We should have practiced that.
You were supposed to remain on the stage according to the script. As part of our congressional charter, the board of directors is tasked with selecting the President of the United States Institute of Peace. And I want to thank the selection committee, Nancy Zirkin, Judy Van Rest, Eric Edelman, and the indispensable man, George Moose. It took a lot of work, and there were a lot of meetings, and it took a lot of time. But it was done, I think, in the most collegial, bipartisan, constructive way, and we're very, very pleased with our final selection. We saw in Jim Marshall a leader who could take the Institute to the next stage in its growth and development as the nation's Center for International Conflict Management and Peace Building. There are few in this country who possess the kind of experience and talent that Jim brings to this office. As a decorated veteran in the Vietnam War, he experienced firsthand the dire consequences of violent conflict. He knows war and the value of peace building. Jim has already traveled, before he even started the job, to USIP field offices, and he's just returning a week ago from Kabul, Islamabad, and Baghdad. He was supposed to go to Libya, weren't you? But it was too dangerous. Your security people were right. The Institute's founding roots in Congress come from the same idea that our country's investment in solving violent international conflict preserves the highest ideals of our nation and of our national interest. At this time, it is my great honor to invite Congressman Cleaver to come to the podium and administer the oath of office.
As we prepare to administer the oath of office, I would just say that the Institute of Peace could not have found someone or anyone who would be more suited for this job than Jim Marshall. He and I, in a way, came into Congress in the same class. He came in special in 2003. I came in 2004. Jim Marshall is represented what is becoming a rare breed of members of Congress, and that is a moderate. Now people campaign against you if you are a moderate, and that's one of the reasons we don't have a lot of peace down the street. And so it is so heartwarming to see that you selected someone who is a man of peace. His spirit is a spirit of peace. And a number of his colleagues joined him today, including Trent Frank. You could just stand, please, where you are the members of Congress who are here. Sanford Bishop, Russ Carnahan, Brad Miller, John Tanner, and Jane Harmon, who was, of course, a member of the House. Thank you very much. Most of you who've gone to any kind of worship place, whether it's a synagogue or a mosque or a church, you probably heard the worship leader say something at the beginning of the service like, and may the Spirit of the Lord be with you, and then there's always a response, and also with you. I have a pastor friend who did that every Sunday, as it is done all around the world. But when he first said it, he realized that there was something wrong and nobody heard him, and so he got the microphone and began to hit it. And he said, "Oh, something's wrong with this microphone." And the people said, "And also with you." There's nothing wrong with this microphone, and so may the peace of the Lord be with you, Jim. I, Jim Marshall, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I will take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties. Of the office of which I am about to enter. So help me God.
Thank you all. Thank you all so very much. My wife Camille is here with us. My son, my sorry son, was supposed to be here and didn't make the show, so we substituted Ray Dubois as my son. He doesn't quite look like Robert, but my daughter Mary is a teacher in the South Bronx, teaching for America, and her fifth grade class, I hope, is actually looking at this. So Mary, you fifth graders, it's a shout out for all of you. This is a really difficult time for all of us. I appreciate my fellow members of Congress who've attended. There were others earlier who made the luncheon. There were a number of State Department personnel who are going to be here. They obviously can't be here because Chris Stevens' body and the bodies of others are being brought back to Andrews Air Force Base. Dave Petraeus was going to be here. I was really looking forward to not calling him doctor, not calling him general, not calling him director. I was just going to call him Ranger Petraeus, because he does that to me all the time. My thanks to the search committee, to the board for this opportunity. Left Congress in 2010, taught at Princeton for a year, and spent a fair amount of that time trying to figure out, was there something that I could do that I'd feel really good about and hopefully be able to make a contribution with. And then this opportunity popped up, and I was fortunate enough to be selected. So I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity. And politicians kind of are a strange breed. I hadn't been involved in politics really at all and was talked into running for mayor. And looking at the city of Macon, I saw all these problems. And the politicians that were around me were describing the problems as opportunities. And once I became the mayor, I understood what they meant. You're there to take care of these problems if you're capable of doing that. Dick Solomon and Ann, just wonderful leadership over so many years. This building wouldn't be here. The GTM guy, does everybody know what that means? Get the money. Robin West. This building wouldn't be here but for Robin, but for a whole lot of other people. In the month and a half or so that I've been on board, first as a consultant, then as a, quote, special employee, I've met lots of staff, both here and abroad. They're doing great work, wonderful people, very bright, very committed to something that's terribly important to all of us, and that's peace for the United States and for the world. And I'm just delighted to have the opportunity to participate in this. Most of the wars of the United States had a marshal in them. There were very few wars that my family managed to miss. We were in the Revolutionary War. We were in the Civil War. Both my father and my grandfather served in World War II. We missed Korea. My father and I both served in Vietnam. I'm named after my grandfather. His name is James Creel Marshall, and when I was born, I was James Creel Marshall II. He was the original Army officer assigned to organize and command the atomic bomb project. And he did so for 14 months. He founded Oak Ridge, Tennessee. He named the Manhattan Project. He largely decided that they'd start in the big city of New York where you could hide all the geeks. It wouldn't be suspicious that all these, brilliant people that talked kind of funny were hanging around. And then finally they had to move it to permanent quarters. My father, Robert Creel Marshall, his son, both are West Point grads, but my father was the original Army officer assigned for the safeguard system, which is our first attempt to actually deploy a ballistic missile defense system. It was geared toward China, and in the treaty that Nixon executed with China that, Dick, I think you had a little bit to do with, in that treaty, the ABM project was scrapped, so you cost my father his job. And now, my grandfather developing the atomic bomb, my father working on a device that would protect against a weapon like that. I was in war myself, but I get to work on peace. So I would say that the Marshall family is trending in the right direction. I had an awful lot of people that I was going to recognize. Emanuel has already recognized some of those, and a number of them are not here, as I mentioned earlier, because of the tragic events a few days ago. They're dealing with other issues. In preparation for these remarks, I asked our PAC team to give me some materials. And I read through the materials and was really struck by some of the quotes that they gave me about peace. And so I think I'll read those now, and then I'm going to read something else, and we'll call it a day. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. Albert Einstein. Peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, quietly building new structures, and however undramatic the pursuit of peace, that pursuit must go on. John F. Kennedy. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed, This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not the way of life in any true sense. Under the clouds of war, it is humanity hanging on an iron cross. Dwight D. Eisenhower. In the long run, the sword is always beaten by spirit. Soldiers usually win battles, and generals get credit for them. If they want peace, nations should avoid the pinpricks that precede cannon shots. Napoleon Bonaparte. Peace in the sense of absence of war is of little value to someone who is dying of hunger or cold. It will not remove the pain of torture inflicted on a prisoner of conscience. It does not comfort those who have lost their loved ones in floods caused by senseless deforestation in the neighboring country. Peace can only last where human rights are respected, where people are fed, and where individuals and nations are free. The 14th Dalai Lama. You can't shake hands with a clenched fist. Indira Gandhi. It's pretty hard to beat those words. I was a law professor at Mercer University for a year. Kirby Godsey, the former president of Mercer University, is here with us. Kirby's now the chancellor. Wonderful philosopher and a great partner in so many ways. I became the mayor of Macon. First person I visited was Kirby Godsey, the university president of Mercer, and we talked about the sort of collaboration that the city and Mercer University could have. And on that very first meeting, I noted that Mercer University Boulevard separated the campus of Mercer University from Tyndall Heights, a housing authority project. I had been chairman of the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. When Mercer University's boulevard was expanded by Georgia DOT, chain link fences were put on both sides of the road. The chain link fence was about 8 feet tall, and on the top of the chain link fence was barbed wire. Here's Mercer, here's Tyndall Heights. The barbed wire was like that. Absolutely the wrong signal. We had barbed wire all over the city of Macon, and Kirby, along with many, many other people, as the first project we had for the new mayor of Macon, we took down miles of barbed wire. We took down all that barbed wire that was separating Mercer University from Tyndall Heights. And that ultimately led to a project of revitalization that's just been wonderful for the university and for the community that surrounds that university. It was led by Kirby, the city assisted, and it's the sort of thing on a small scale that you would hope we could do globally. Take down barbed wires and substitute for that understanding and some peaceful, positive relationships. I gave the board of directors a few things in my attempt to persuade the board, actually the search committee, that I might be the right choice here. And one thing I wanted to do is try and indicate that I was not sort of Johnny-come-lately to these issues. And so I gave the board a copy of a speech I gave in 2008, a law day address at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. Now, I was the first law faculty member asked to give a law day address. I couldn't afford to embarrass my colleagues, and so I worked pretty hard on coming up with exactly what I wanted to say that would encourage these law students in an appropriate way and wouldn't embarrass my colleagues. What I'm about to read was a portion of that address, and it's sort of written in a way that I hope we no longer read on at least the first few pages of our website, because it's geared toward a postgraduate audience. So bear with me. Some of the language is a little bit difficult to follow. It was the 50th anniversary of the class of 1948. I was first asked to honor them. Mercer's law school class of 1948 had 27 students. The tuition was $250 a year. You can imagine how shocked the law students of 2008 were to hear those two statistics. The other thing that was really stunning about that class is the success it enjoyed, the contributions it made, globally actually, once they became lawyers. Griffin Bell, former Attorney General Griffin Bell, was part of the class. had a number of judges, circuit court judges and others, many in politics, 2 members of Congress, very, very successful small group of people. And so let me now just go into the speech. Bear with me. It won't take me that long to read through it. Hope you enjoy it. Every time I say lawyer, think peace builder, think ambassador, think negotiator, think mediator, or think lawyer. Because in a sense, they're all doing the same thing, tackling the same kind of problem. Much has changed since this greatest generation served in war and then returned to further peace. Most of this change has been good, but not all of it. Some 20 years ago, Frank Fukuyama famously contended that we had reached the end of history, a state of global equilibrium courtesy of liberal democracy and free market capitalism. He proclaimed that insular nation-states would soon be relegated to the dustbins, overwhelmed by global economic interdependence. The march of liberal democracy was unstoppable, he argued, since no other form of government was its equal in assuring personal freedoms and efficiently generating material wealth. He suggested that mercantilists worldwide, intent on profit, would dominate liberal representative governments, removing trade and travel barriers and assuring peace because profit was less certain without it. What Fukuyama did not foresee or sufficiently appreciate were the potential threats and turbulence posed by poorly integrated and ungoverned global interdependence. Billions worldwide survive on less than $2 a day, and they are reminded daily of their poverty thanks to the miracles of modern communication and transportation. Billions worldwide want to be like us. They yearn for modern, well-capitalized, free market economies that enable and entice consumption well beyond their material needs, consumption levels the world cannot possibly sustain. I am dismayed that our Treasury Secretary thinks we should make the Chinese better consumers. Severe economic disruptions are inevitable. Many will be global in reach. Greater interdependence assures this. Greater interdependence combined with a cost-efficient, just-in-time delivery business model also assures that these severe economic disruptions could literally be deadly for thousands, if not millions. Add to this the threats of global pandemics, climate change, terror networks, resurgent nationalism, and religious xenophobia, and we can only hope that the end of history has not yet arrived. If it has, then it will be one of constant conflict. The lethality of hatred is geometrically expanding. Whether chemical, biological, or nuclear, the technology of death and mayhem is readily available, portable, and well within the reach of angry individuals, usually young men, scattered throughout the globe. In the mid-1990s, Robert Wright published a book entitled Non-Zero, The Logic of Human Destiny. I highly recommend his captivating evaluation of human history and civilization. He identifies individual, family, and group cooperation for the good of the whole as the indispensable ingredient for the success of civilizations and hence for the success of the individuals, families, and groups within those civilizations. While civilizations come and go, Wright argues, civilization itself continues to advance, since the useful technologies and ideas developed within a failed civilization typically survive to be used by others. To whom do we pass our civilization's progress if global civilization itself fails? If its individuals, families, and groups, many now organized around non-state actors, are unable to cooperate for the good of the whole, plundering the common pool with zero-sum panic, weakly defended with references to Ayn Rand, the tragedy of the commons writ large across the globe. Now, many of the law students here today, mired in the seemingly pointless minutiae of courses and procedure or evidence, probably wonder what in the world anything I've just said has to do with the Law Day's theme, quote, the rule of law, foundation for communities of opportunity and equity, end quote. I am confident, however, that every member of the class of 1948 gets it. They know personally both the lawyer's opportunity and the lawyer's duty to help humanity conquer the challenges I have just described. Our present circumstances call for lawyering on the grandest stage, a stunning opportunity for service, for doing well while personally doing good universally. Opportunity and equity will not flourish for future generations across the globe unless lawyers play a major role. There are concrete tasks lawyers will help accomplish within the United States. One is reorganizing and refocusing our government to address these asymmetric challenges. This, unfortunately, will keep lawyers busy for quite some time. As former Congressman Doug Barnard and Attorney General Bell will tell you, major change in Washington is unlikely without a sense of urgency. Altering routines, ceding turf, and requesting current sacrifices are not the strengths of the political class. Many pay me now or maybe pay me later decisions must be made, easy targets for political grandstanding and attacks. But shepherding along the American governmental process is a small part of the challenge. The world's diverse peoples and economies, already interdependent, must become better integrated. Accomplishing this without violence will require education, negotiation, compromise, complicated international agreements, and legislation plus the development and use of effective, nonviolent international processes for dispute resolution, tasks for lawyers throughout the globe. The world's diverse populations and groups must clearly, not wishfully, see the challenges and opportunities facing global civilization. Good lawyers are adept at helping their clients see such things. This talent is not unique to lawyers, but lawyers without it are uniquely unsuited to their trade. Humanity must enlist those with such talents, lawyers in particular, to the critical task of better integrating the globe's interdependent populations and helping humanity find a sustainable future. Lawyers serve every nook and cranny of the globe. They must formally and informally network with one another, first educating one another about the globe's challenges, and then exploring ways in which lawyers globally can help humanity address these challenges. Lawyers should accept, even cherish, this civic duty as a professional obligation. Nothing could be more meaningful and rewarding than serving such a cause. You may have heard the story of the wealthy man who went to heaven and was met at the pearly gates by St. Peter. And Peter asked him why he should be admitted, and the wealthy man replied, "Well, I've never sinned." Peter was shocked by this statement, thinking it itself was a lie and hence a sin. So he whipped out the celestial computer and went ahead and looked the guy up, and sure enough, no sins. So he said, "That's amazing. Now, tell me why you should be admitted to heaven. In order to get into heaven, you have to have done some good for somebody." Well, the wealthy man was not used to being treated this way. He felt that Peter was being pretty disrespectful, and so he snapped at him. "Well, I once gave a beggar 2 bits, so I've done some good, and by your standard, I should be admitted to heaven because I've not sinned." Peter said, "This is a most unusual case. Would you wait right here? I'll be back in just a few minutes. I have to check with the head man." He comes back. He gives the guy 2 bits. He says, "The Lord told me to give you 2 bits and tell you to go to hell." Lance Armstrong has raised millions of dollars for cancer research with his Live Strong campaign. Just as an aside, I was a mayor when that first started, when the yellow band first came out, and hard on the heels of that yellow band, I got band after band after band, different colors, pushing different things. And the one that really struck me was one that was a slogan chosen by United Jewish Charities: "Live generously." In this interdependent world, state and non-state actors can be both strong and generous. But they will not be strong for long without also being generous. Lawyers can help us see this. Their success in doing so may determine our success as a global civilization. Finding a sustainable future will require both leadership and voluntary concessions from strong nations that might choose to offer neither. Let me end by reciting an updated version of one verse from a song first sung on the steps of Russia more than 1,000 years ago. And It was in a different language, and when I first read this, it was in Old English, so you heard things like spaketh and stuff like that. So this is my version of that verse. I've said this at so many Memorial Day events and too many services that I've attended, memorializing a soldier that's been killed. I think about Chris Stevens and the others who are being brought back to the country. When I think about that, I think about this verse. A soldier buried long ago on a battlefield hears lovers laughing as they pass by. And the soldier asks, "Are these not the voices of those who come to honor and remember me?" But the lovers reply, "Not so, my hero. We are those that remember not, for the grass is green, and the earth has smiled, and the dead must be forgotten." Then the soldier says from his deep, dark grave, "I am content." Soldiers, lawyers, ambassadors, peace builders, negotiators, mediators, our staff here and globally are combatants in related arenas, seeking peace and prosperity for those they represent. If nothing else, they both deserve contentment if they have lived generously, sharing their gifts in causes greater than themselves. Lawyers who join the effort, the battle to help humanity become better integrated, to help humanity find a sustainable future of opportunity and equity for humans throughout the globe, such lawyers will certainly find contentment. God bless you all. I'm delighted to be on board. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Jim. This is a happy occasion, and in the words of General MacArthur, these proceedings are closed. But I would like to say that thank you for coming today. Again, on behalf of myself and the board, let me express my thanks to Congressman Cleaver, to Dick Solomon and Ann for many years of service, to our distinguished guests, and most of all to Jim and his family for their service, their commitment to the Institute, to its good work, and to the advancement of practical and sustainable solutions for a complex and dangerous world. At this time, I'd like to invite all of you to greet Jim and Camille with a few words of welcome before joining us for a reception out on Peacemaker Plaza, right outside there on the mall. For those of you who must leave immediately, please make your way out the way you came in. If you need assistance, our staff is standing by. Again, thank you, and these proceedings are closed. Funny thing about